Hello ladies and gentlemen, Ed Photog J the Great, Jeremy Smith here once again. I hope you guys liked part 1 of the D4 review. I apologize for having that brief audio issue. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can get myself some better wireless microphones so that way I won't have as much interference and everything. But anyways, until then, I'm back inside where I don't have to worry about that. After shooting with the D4, I came to a lot of conclusions about it so far. I was kind of personally, I was kind of thinking of my future camera upgrades, and I was comparing the D4 and the D800, which there's still more information on the D800 coming, and I'm going to be taking it out in the field, kind of like how I did on the D4, and I'm just going to shoot with it more, and also be doing the same thing with the D800E. So that'll be interesting. But I've been kind of thinking about what I was going to do personally, and initially I was thinking the D4 could be good for a lot of things I do, but right now I'm thinking more along the lines of the D800 because I have a tendency to shoot, fewer images, and I print large and so on. But of course I'm going to test the D800 at high ISO, even though I kind of have an idea of exactly what's going to happen. I'm going to test it to be sure, and we'll kind of go from there. In shooting with the D4, one thing became apparent quickly, and that was the fact that the speed is completely a waste for me. I mean, I just don't need, anything. If a camera can do 3 frames a second, that's more than enough for me, honestly. I had the camera on continuous high. Well, the camera's owner had it on continuous high originally, and I mean, I would try to take a couple photos, and I would take like 5. So definitely the speed was not something that I really need. Just like I have all my cameras set up, I ended up putting it on continuous low and limiting the frames per second to 3 frames, and that was much more my speed. I did like having the integrated grip built in. That was very nice. I love what they've done with all the controls. Some of the things that I still kind of wonder about, one thing is the lack of USB 3, first of all. And I kind of realized that they probably did that because, of course, you do have the Ethernet port on it, so that does alleviate that issue some. But I still would have liked to see USB 3 on it. I do like shooting tailored to Lightroom and that sort of thing, and so having USB 3 for that would be nice. Although I can kind of see why on the D800 it's a bigger deal to have it there, because of course you're dealing with much larger files to transfer. But anyways, that's just one thing I kind of noticed. I didn't really have any really big gripes about the camera though. Everything was put together very well, as you'd expect on a $6,000 camera body. If I were a sports shooter and I was of course photographing a lot of action, things like that, or if I were working in an environment where I needed to control multiple cameras simultaneously and things like that, as far as being able to control the different camera settings from a remote computer or something like that, the D4's feature set makes a lot of sense for that. I don't shoot anything that really moves. I shoot portraits, and I shoot weddings, and I shoot some fashion and things like that, and the occasional burst is nice, but for the most part, just putting the camera in continuous low, and I usually shoot in about 3 or 4 frame increments, and so for the D800, or for my use rather, the D800 would be more along the lines of what I'm going to be doing, and I think the resolution will be nice. So stay tuned for that. Anyways though, right now we're going to take a look at some of my samples that I actually shot with the D4. I know I showed you guys some of those close up on the camera back, but we're going to take a closer look on my computer screen, and I also have some video samples as well. So we're going to take a look at that now. Okay, so here we go. Taking a quick look at some of the samples. I did shoot with a little bit of flash during this, but I later decided, oh, it looks like my camera's not quite straight. Hold on a second here. I'm going to have to go ahead and get some software to allow me to film from my screen. But for the sake of demonstration, I'm just filming my monitor. Anyways, first shot here was shot at ISO 800, and I was at 2.8 with the 70 to 200 VR2. I usually like to shoot wide open most of the time, actually. I usually like to shoot it, if I'm using like a 2.8 lens, I usually shoot it at 2.8 or f4. If I'm using a 1.4 prime, I usually shoot it between 1.4 and f2. I do stop down every once and again, but for the most part, that's kind of my thing. I like shooting wide open or close to it. You can kind of see here. Just zoom in for a moment. Really no noise to speak of here, of course at 800 ISO. Let's see here, we're going to go ahead and zoom in a little closer. There you can go, you can see right there. This is it, this has got really, let's see what type of develop settings I apply to this file. So we have here, I'm going to go ahead and, okay, so that's straight out of camera right there. There's really not any grain to speak of at all. Lots and lots of detail. Just a subtle amount of grain in the shadows there. I'll turn my Lightroom adjustments back on there. Okay, let's see here. As the evening wore on, I started to shoot at higher ISO settings. This one is still at 800. Let's see here. A few different versions. Here's one of the ones with flash that I decided to rule out of the video because it doesn't really, the whole point of the camera was to shoot at high ISO to see how it perform. Okay, this one right here is at 1600 ISO. Okay, so this of course is after some Lightroom adjustments beforehand. That's how it came straight out of camera like that. If we zoom in on this, we're actually zooming in to 2:1 in Lightroom right now. This is straight out of camera. There's a fair bit of grain here, you can see. There really isn't any color noise though, so mostly just all luminance noise. Still lots and lots of detail. Let's see here. Still lots of detail there. Whoops. See if I can brighten this video up a bit. Okay. I've been shooting all my video with the Canon 5D Mark II, and now I'm using a D7000 tonight, so it's a little different. You guys can probably see it a little bit better now. So yeah, a fair bit of luminance noise there, lots of detail still, no real color noise to speak about. After a couple little quick Lightroom adjustments, it looks like this. So still very nice. We'll go on here. This one right here is at 3200 ISO. There's the black and white version of it, and the color version is right here. We'll go ahead and take a closer look at this one. Once again, we're going in all the way to 2 to 1 in Lightroom. So we'll do a little bit of before. Okay, so there's before, no noise reduction or anything like that to speak of. Once again, you can see a fair bit of luminance noise. Once again, no color noise to speak about. I'm still very, very impressed with the amount of detail in the hair and in the eyes. This is at f2.8, 1/125th of a second at 160 millimeters and 3200 ISO. Of course, VR is on. I don't know if you guys can see this in the video, but notice that her pupils are completely dilated. So that lets you know that it was dark right there. Very interesting. So once again, if we turn on the Lightroom adjustments here, on this one I applied, let's see here, I applied an adjustment of 30 for the luminance noise, and you can see that pretty much gets rid of all the grain there. So before, after, before, after. So yeah, I mean, just a little bit of noise reduction there, and I was still able to retain a lot of detail here. Very, very impressive. It basically looks like ISO. It looks like about ISO 1600 or so on my D700. Maybe even a little bit lower ISO. Maybe even like ISO 1000. So there's definitely a difference here. So I was impressed by that. We got on a brief time schedule there towards the end, and I wasn't able to shoot as much as I'd like to. I will say though, I as far as taking, I know a lot of people out there, you know, take the camera to 12,800 and then they use the the boost settings above that and everything. I think Canon and Nikon both just need to stop the foolishness when it comes to all these ISO values above 12,800. I mean, for the most part, you know, I realize different people have different levels of quality that they require, but for what I do, anything over 6400 ISO is going to be useless anyway. No matter what camera I'm using, doesn't matter if I'm using a Canon 5D Mark III or a D4 or whatever. It's not really usable for me at all, so I don't really bother with that too much. For video though, I do think that there's some use to it. Let's see here, we're going to look at the video sample here. I played with Lightroom 4's video settings a little bit. I would talk about that, but it seems like everyone else has done some form of video on it already. Most of this video was actually shot at very, very high ISO settings. I shot a lot of this at you know, ISO 6400. I think I topped out just above 12,800 as we got really, really dark. I was very impressed. I used a Lens Baby Muse for this video. I intend to start blending my I intend to start blending some video with my still images. Okay, that's actually a still. I converted this to black and white using Lightroom 4 here, and I was very, very impressed with how that went. I do still think about things from a still perspective, so I'm still, you know, getting acquainted to video. But all in all, I would say it went pretty well. I'm sure I was saying something completely ridiculous right here when I was making this video, so no sound, guys. It is worth mentioning that the D4 has the 2.7 times crop mode in video, whereas the D800 doesn't. So that's one of the main things that comes to mind right now as far as differences. I will definitely have to play with that more in the future when I get more time. I mean, if you shoot any type of wildlife or anything where you just can't quite get as close to the action as you'd like to, having that 2.7 times crop mode in video is amazing. So I can definitely see where you could make use of that. Sadly, that feature is not something that's on the D800. This is the portion of the video that's at 12,800. There's a fair bit of grain to it. Converting it to black and white, though, of course, gives it a very interesting look. Let's see, who knows what this last clip is. Oh, that's absolutely nothing. That's when I accidentally bumped the record button on the camera. Speaking of bumping the record button on the camera, though, I have to say that's probably the only part of the D4 controls that I don't like right now, is the fact that they replaced the mode button with the record button. And I do like the inclusion of the record button, but I wish that they had just left the mode button in the same spot and put the record button, over to the side instead. So that's something that I didn't particularly like control-wise. It felt really awkward having to, bend my finger backwards to get to the mode dial, or mode button rather. So I wasn't particularly happy about that. I kind of wish that Nikon had just made the mode button and the record button two custom buttons and then let us actually map those the way we want to. I think that would have been ideal. But of course, just a minor gripe. Nothing terribly serious. But I was definitely impressed overall. If you are a sports shooter, obviously, with the speed that camera offers, obviously, that would be the reason to get one. However, I will say, if you are a sports shooter and you're just starting out and you don't use Nikon or Canon and you don't want to spend $6 grand on a body, based on what's available right now, if you're wanting to go with something with the best possible low light performance for sport use, I would definitely say go with the 5D Mark III. I mean, it's $3,500 for the body. You can basically get that body and a 70-200 2.8 IS lens for just the cost of the Nikon D4 body by itself. So if you're shooting sports and you want very good quality and you're starting out, no doubt, the 5D Mark III definitely is where it's at in my opinion. Or if you're shooting, depending on how you shoot, if you're a wedding photographer, that may actually be the best way to go as well. If you are like me and you are shooting a lot of portraits and you're shooting in the studio a lot and you print big, you print 12x18s and 20x30s and larger than that, something like the D800 makes a lot more sense. Anyways, I'm not going to overstep myself. I'm going to actually talk about the D800 whenever we do the D800 review. Until then, though, definitely subscribe. Follow me on Facebook, like my page, or follow me on Twitter at PhotogJTheGreat. Until then, until the D800 review, I should say, I will talk to you later.